Do y'all ever feel like you just have too much stuff? The closet is overflowing, the garage is overflowing, or like me, that chair of donations is really overflowing? That's where Adios comes in. They're a local Austin service that makes it ridiculously easy to say goodbye to your old stuff and feel good doing it. Go to sayadios.com and order a bag, fill it up, text them, and they will pick it up from your doorstep. So get on over there, use code CITYCAST for 50% off. That's sayadios.com. One bag, one text, one less thing on your mind. Voting is now underway in the city's tax rate election, and the two sides are really fighting for your support. So today on CityCast Austin, we dig into the case for the increase with City Council member Chito Vela, and then we'll hear about the other side tomorrow. It's Wednesday, October 22nd. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, I am here today with Jose Chito Vela, District 4 Austin City Council member. How are we doing?
Doing great.
So we are going to be talking about the now infamous Prop Q, because it's just quickly turned into a huge thing. Early voting is now underway, and Austinites are being asked to raise taxes in order to bring in about $110 million more dollars. And that's going to be at the cost of around $300 a year for people who own homes that are valued at around $500,000. So I want to know, what's your elevator pitch for why people should vote for Prop Q?
If you want to maintain quality city services, we need revenue to do that. And we've got to bump up the property taxes just a little bit to make sure that we have enough money for good, strong public safety systems, for clean parks, for homeless services, for wildfire mitigation, for all the stuff that the city wants to do. It's good stuff. It's expensive. And the legislature has tried to kind of handcuff us at this 3.5% property tax revenue growth level. And honestly, that's just not a realistic level for a growing city like Austin, where inflation is like 3%.
Oh my God, inflation is so much.
And in locally, we in Austin, I mean, Austin's it's a great city for many reasons, but one of the reasons, especially my immigrant brothers and sisters would come to Austin, is because they can make good money in Austin, in construction, or in other words, Austin has competitive wages, and we're an employer, and we've got to compete with other employers. And when other employers are giving their employees a 5% raise or a 6% raise, and we're not able to at least come close to matching that, we're not competitive, and we can't hire the accountants and the program managers and the HVAC techs and the construction crews and all that we need too. So I mean, that 3.5% revenue level, it's just honestly not a realistic long-term level. It's going to need the occasional adjustment. And that's what we're asking voters to do, is to let us make that little adjustment.
Makes sense to get what we need, right?
Absolutely.
So according to the latest campaign finance reports, organizations supporting Prop Q have raised more than $130,000. And about half of that has come from organizations that work with the city to provide like homelessness services. Other donors include council members, including yourself, and employee unions representing employees who would benefit from the pay increase if Prop Q passes. And so, I want to ask the question, what should we know about who's funding the Prop Q fight? Or is there anything we should know about who's funding the Prop Q fight?
Yeah, no, well, the people that are funding the fight are intimately knowledgeable about these types of city services. Obviously, the labor understands the situation, and labor is supportive of Prop Q, and they know that we've got to be competitive as an employer. And to give you an example of us being competitive as an employer, and it's something that has really gone well for us, I think, is our work from home policy. Eh, People and employers all around the city started doing work from home policies, and city of Austin had to match. And I mean, this is coming out of the pandemic and all that stuff, but we've had to become an organization that allows its employees to work from home, at least in some amount of the time, those that can work from home. And we do that to remain competitive. If we want to remain competitive on wages, we've got to be able to match those private sector wage increases. The employees of the city know that, and the employees of the city are obviously supportive of Prop Q. But the other folks that have put in money are the nonprofit organizations and largely the homeless serving organizations, and they have for the first time ever come together, and we've got a master plan to essentially tackle homelessness in a comprehensive way.
Yeah.
We've built the housing over the last few years. We've put a lot of money into permanently supportive housing for the homeless, into low income housing, and we're standing up the services that are going to accompany a lot of that housing. And so we've got an opportunity to, I think, really do something big on the homelessness front, to really get people off the streets, to get them into housing, to start to really make a dent in one of the biggest problems that Austin has faced in the last
Right.
decade. And so they see that opportunity. The city sees that opportunity. The council members see that opportunity, and that's why we've put so much money into homelessness, because we've got to borrow a phrase from the old Obamacare days. We've got to bend the curve on homelessness. We've got to slow it down and then start housing people, and
Yeah.
then get folks off the streets and into shelter, and that's what a lot of the Prop Q money is going to be doing.
Well, I always, when I have this conversation with people about homelessness, I say, there's a couple of things. Like, there are a lot of people that are just a paycheck away from being unhoused, and that's just that, period, the end.
Yeah.
That is just the truth. And then you take into consideration like rising costs. It's getting more expensive to live in this city. It's getting more expensive to exist in general. Why wouldn't you also want them to have a living wage so that they do not end up unhoused?
And the money is really kind of thinking about the homelessness money in Prop Q. It's really kind of balanced like that, where
Yeah.
a chunk of it is going to things like what they call rapid rehousing and stuff,
Hmm.
where that's somebody that is either just become homeless or is on the verge of becoming
Exactly.
homelessness because of a illness or an unemployment or an injury or something like that, where we can get a 1 month rental assistance to them, and they're fine. And so we've got a chunk of money dedicated to kind of emergency stabilization, for especially for families. That's really
Yeah.
the number one target is folks with kids that are on the verge of becoming homelessness. On the other side, you've got someone that's chronically homeless, that this is not just he just needs 1 month rent. I mean, this person does not even really know how to live in an apartment anymore, and is going to really require some socialization and some case management and some real support, real intensive
Yeah.
support. That's going to be really expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, just that's not just 1 month's rent, and
Period.
what I mean.
Yeah.
Here's a bag of groceries. This is like, no, we have to, kind of start from scratch almost. So
Yeah.
I think the plan is balanced between those two different needs, and obviously I'm in favor of it, and I think it's a good thing. I think it'll have a positive impact on Austin.
Yeah. So I think, and also, so meanwhile, on the other side of the fence, right? Committees against Prop Q have raised about $112,506. Many individual donors with less than $100, are donating, plus bigger donations from local entrepreneurs, business community, etc. I've heard that, well, if you raise your property taxes, then people that own a home might be in danger of losing their home. They could end up homeless anyway. And so I'm curious, like, what do we know about the people who are funding the anti Prop Q fight?
Yeah. I think there are largely folks that are, regardless of the circumstances, they're going to be against a property
Yeah.
tax increase.
Okay.
Period. And to me, the irony of that position is that a lot of the folks that are just adamantly against Prop Q were supportive of a contract with our police officers, where the average raise for the police officers for those 6 years actually is about 4.7% per year. A lot of the same people that are funding the anti-Prop Q effort are supportive of us entering into a 4-year contract with our firefighters, which I'm supportive of the firefighter contract too, but it's
Right.
again going to give a raise to the firefighters when you include the reduction in their work hours and everything to, a 4.5-5% kind of range. And would ask those folks, how do we give our employees raises of 4% and above when we're limiting our revenues to 3.5% growth per year? And wages are the largest source of expense for the city. I mean, what we do is labor intensive stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
police, firefighter, EMS, parks crews, airport workers, like, I mean, there's not a lot of work from home in that big chunk of the workforce. So that's where I don't get it. We're just not going to be able to really staff up public safety or other critical positions if we don't give decent wages, and that 3.5% level is just not going to let us do it.
Yeah. It's like you want the increases in pay for our, fire, our APD. That money, it has to come from somewhere. We got to pay for it in some sort of way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we gave the contract to the police just to give an example of wage pressures that the city is facing. And then,
Mm.
a new officer in the city of Austin is going to be making about $70,000 per year, kind of like right off of out of the academy and coming off of their probationary status. About 70,000 per year. The city of Houston just signed a contract about a year or so after we did, that their starting officers are now making about $80,000 per year.
Wow.
And this is because all of law enforcement, DPS can't hire up enough officers to staff their positions. There's just not a lot of folks. It's a very small pool of folks that would even honestly consider being
Yeah.
an officer and have the physical and the mental and emotional skills that it takes to be a law enforcement officer. So there's just been this wage pressure. I mean, there's just not that many folks out there. Everybody wants to hire them. What happens? Wages go up. We're in the middle of that, and we just need more revenues if we want to hire qualified police officers. Back in the day, it was just a physical thing, really. I mean, you just had
Right.
to be literate and then kind of strong enough and tough enough to be a cop. Now we're asking our cops to like make sound judgments and show discretion and and de-escalate, and
Yeah.
it's become the caliber of person that we need to hire. It's not, it's higher
Ideally.
than ideally, exactly.
Yeah.
It's got to be somebody that is going to be honestly a good police officer and not just a tough guy. So the wages have risen all across law enforcement. It's a tough one, and honestly, EMS and fires, very similar situation. Those are
Yeah.
just tough jobs, man. Those are tough work,
Yeah.
and you got to pay them well.
Now, in July, City Manager T.C. Broadnax proposed a balanced $6.25 billion budget. It was rejected, and council passed instead this $6.3 billion budget, dependent upon passing this tax rate increase. In the statesman endorsement against Prop Q, it wrote, and I'm putting this in quotations, a city as prosperous and resourceful as Austin should be able to live within its means. I'm curious, do you think that Austin could have functioned on Broadnax's proposed budget?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And, Broadnax balanced his budget by pulling from our reserves. And thankfully, when I got on council, we had about 14% of the general fund as a reserve level. Since then, we've been actually putting some some money in the cookie jar there, and we're up to 17% of general fund reserves. And so the way we would balance the budget ultimately would be to really kind of pull from those reserves. But of course, that's a one-time kind of thing. You know what I mean? You can't just go back to your savings again and again. And the other thing that I would really ask the Statesman editorial folks is that we used to collect for the last 25 years. Austin would collect an average of about 6 to 6.5% of the increase in property tax revenues per year. The legislature passed that law limiting it to 3.5 in 2019, and then in 2020 the law started. But if you look at from 2000 to 2020, it's about 6.5% per year. All of a sudden, we were limited to 3.5% per year. So a big cut in the budget. And we've managed within that level for the last 5 years. It's time. We need more money to continue the level of operations that the people of Austin have come to expect. And if it doesn't pass, I'm not going to support closing libraries or closing pools or anything like that. But the reality is that we might have to cut back pool hours and library hours. Parks maintenance, which we're trying to fund through Prop Q, the kind of the gold standard of parks maintenance, where man, I want those bathrooms cleaned every day. I want the trash picked up every day, every other day. We might go back to the bathrooms get cleaned once a week. The trash gets picked up only, once a week or twice a week instead of every day. To me, so that's when I think about the cuts that are coming. That's the type of cuts that it's not going to be things are going to close. It's that the quality of the services that you've come to expect from the city of Austin will start to kind of decline and degrade. But I would really like to know for the opponents, like I said, where are we supposed to get the money to pay our police officers and our staff and to make all these expenses that virtually everybody wants. And one more thing, just for the listeners, property taxes is the number one source of revenue for the city. That's about half of all the city's revenue is property taxes. So it's not like there's these other magic sources out there. The tax money that the legislature has allowed us, about half of that is the property tax revenues. About 25% of that is the sales tax, which sales taxes are flat right now. They're not growing. And then there's a bunch of other, from the admissions fees at Barton Springs to, your the ticket that you pay at court. There's a bunch of little tiny sources that add up, but they're not, we can't raise those. That's not really kind of going to generate the kind of revenue that we need to staff a police department, a fire department, an EMS.
So along those lines, we talked a little bit about how cutting a little here and cutting a little there, just it'll add up eventually, but it's not going to add up in the way that's needed to meet the need. And I hear a lot of criticism, especially since the logo. We had someone come on and explain the whole logo thing, but there's a lot of conversation about how city council spending is out of control. I think perception is a huge part of this, right? It's just like we've been talking, one person might perceive this one thing is yes, we need to spend money on this. And another person's why in the hell are we spending money on a logo or whatever, even though the logo has already been paid for, we found out. It was discussed years ago. So do you feel like y'all are pretty strict with how you spend money, or could we tighten the belt a little bit more?
Yeah, and those are the kind of questions that I grapple with,
Yeah.
and honestly, city
Yeah.
management grapples with. I mean, you know how it works,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we all want. I'm looking for like money for this thing that I want to spend on, and I'm like, where can we cut to get my money that I
Yeah.
want to spend on this other thing, right? Like,
Exactly.
uh,
Exactly.
the logo, interestingly enough, is long term and efficiency gain. Uh, there's a great, and I'm sure the God bless whoever came on to defend the logo,
It was Jessica. It was Jessica.
Jessica King. Oh,
Yeah, Jessica King was like, "All right, let's talk. Let's just get this out of the way." It was awesome.
God, that is awesome. So what we had done in the past, we have a city seal, but then like every department had its own logo, and that's like 35 different logos that all have to occasionally be, fluffed up, and you know what I mean. You got to kind of, modernize your logo now and then. And so city management actually had identified that. And not only is it that we've got too many logos as a cost measure, no one was sure, like Austin Code's logo. They're like, is that the city of Austin? And like every
Yeah.
department had a different logo. Parks, and it was
Yeah.
like you weren't even sure if this was actual a city employee or not. And so the decision was made to we need one logo that all the departments are gonna use, and then we're gonna call everybody by that. We're switching the names, and now it's not the Office of Police Oversight. It's just going to be Austin Police Oversight,
Right.
Austin Parks, Austin Police, Austin Fire, like, just a convention for all of the naming and the logos for all the city departments. So long term, that's a good thing. And that
Right.
just coordinating everybody under one logo. Now we just have one kind of font, one everything. It's simpler, it's easier, it's better, it's cleaner. But one other thing that the TC Broadnax, our a city manager, a very veteran city manager, and I think he's doing a great job. One of the areas that he's identified has been IT spending. Uh,
Mm.
and the story is just like the logo. Departments here, and again, as you know, Nikki, they're
Yeah.
very strong, and
Yeah.
they have their own culture and they have their own ideas.
Their own rules. Yes.
Yep. And so we've had too many individualized purchases of IT by different departments saying that I need this solution and I need this solution and I need this solution. And, and then that's just each purchase by the individual department costs more than a collective purchase by the entire entity. So right now, City Manager Broadnax is consolidating a lot of that. And it's going to take time because some of the IT contracts that we have, they're multi-year contracts that, we're locked in with this, like Teams or whatever, Microsoft
Yeah.
or whatever. We have a 3-year contract, but they're going to consolidate a lot of those contracts, and he is hoping to see some relatively substantial savings on IT purchase by centralizing a lot of that. Now, that doesn't mean, I mean, Austin Energy, obviously, with the whole electric grid management thing, that they're going to have unique needs that we're not going to make them shift. Or the airport, for example, also probably has a whole world of a very unique proprietary software that we're not going to. Obviously, they're going to stay on those systems, but let's make sure everybody that can share, one software contract on a cheaper kind of per user amount is on that one contract to ensure that we're getting the most out of every property tax dollar. So those efforts are underway every day. And I got elected in February of 22. This is the best city management kind of executive team that the city has had since I've been in office.
Oh wow.
I think that TC Broadnax is doing an excellent job. So that's the other reason that I'm willing to empower folks and say, like, I think the city is running pretty well today. It hasn't always in the past. I'm not gonna, there's problems, we're always gonna have them. But this team, I think we've got a good team together, and I wanna hit the gas and go.
So what I'm hearing then is, as a whole, city council included, there is a move towards efficiency. And with that efficiency is coming a little, it does sound like you are being a little tightening that belt a little bit in different ways.
Yeah, and these are details that only, a local government policy wonks would be interested in. But we're shifting right now in EMS, and this is part of what the Prop Q is going to fund. Where right now the ambulances that we use are the big ambulances with two people on them. One is a EMT, emergency medical tech, and the other is a paramedic. And the paramedic has a little more authority for medical practice. A little bit more
Yeah.
procedures and stuff that the paramedic can do than the EMT. But about half of our EMS calls don't involve that serious of an emergency to where we really don't need to send a big old two-person ambulance to go and check on this one call. So we're shifting to these things they call them basic life support ambulances, BLS ambulances. And it's basically an SUV, and you send one person with a little medical kit, right? And it's maybe an elderly person that their blood pressure is very high and they're very concerned and
Right.
they're very
Yeah. Yeah.
nervous, and could you help me, please? You might not have family around. EMS is front line.
Yeah.
EMS is like, again, I mean, grandma used to call her daughter to come over and check on her, but maybe daughter can't come anymore, she's moved out of town. Folks are calling for EMS for very kind of basic life support
Mm.
stuff. And I mean, we've got to go out there. We can talk to them on the phone, but we need to go out there. And sometimes you just go out there to take the person's blood pressure. You're going to be okay. Just and sometimes just even that little kind of care, that little contact, just a little love and attention shown to the person helps them. Or sometimes it could be as simple, and EMS were telling me about this, about someone who they can't get out of bed to get their medicine. If we can send a little SUV with one person on it, that's a more efficient way than sending a big two-person ambulance. And so we're saving money in the long term. But again, just because we're standing up the basic life support ambulances doesn't mean that we're shutting down the big ambulances. Like it's addition, where we're trying to
Yeah.
take those extra calls using the BLS ambulances, but that doesn't mean we're shutting things down. So again, there's like it's one of those things you kind of gotta spend money to make money. You kind of gotta spend money
Yeah.
to save money
For the long term.
for the long term. And that's
Right.
ultimately what we're here for, is not just kind of the flash in the pan kind of cuts or anything like that. I mean, I'm trying to get a city together that's functioning well, not just honestly for me, but for, I mean, my kiddos and stuff. I want them to
Yeah.
inherit a city that's in a good, strong position, that's growing and healthy. And we have to be there for us. Austin has to take care of Austin. If we want something done, we can't just look to Abbott and the state of Texas, or Trump and the president, to come and help us. We've got to do it ourselves, and I think that's also part of what why we need Prop Q today.
So let's talk about non-negotiables. What are the non-negotiables when it comes to figuring out the budget? Like, I feel like as a constituent personally, a cost of living increase for employees is a non-negotiable. And I do not work for the city anymore, and I still feel like a cost of living increase for employees is important. But I know a lot of people that feel like the police contract is a non-negotiable.
That's a really great question, because someone's non-negotiable is someone else's amenity. For some people,
Right. Yeah.
you don't even bother to collect trash at the park. Like, I mean, they would really go there, right? But some people, for example, they never really use the parks. They never really go to the parks. They don't really care about the parks. They're like, whatever. I don't care whether the water fountain is broken or how dirty the bathrooms are. I'm never really going to be there anyway. Again, other people, and again, this is a hot issue in Austin, and has been for a long time, about police spending. I can't tell you. I mean, I'm with you where I had a law firm and I had employees. You've got to give your employees at least an cost of living adjustment to match inflation.
Right.
If not, they're really taking a pay cut, and they're not going to stick with you very long if they're taking pay cuts.
Well, and I would want it myself. So why
Yeah.
wouldn't I want it for just because someone is a government employee
Mhm.
doesn't mean that they shouldn't have the same cost of living increases that I would want for anybody that, you know what I mean? Like it seems like a no-brainer to me.
No, no, and I agree. But and so then that's I think the question that has been put forward to a lot of the opponents is like, well, what would you cut? And I still don't really hear a good answer to that question other than like waste. The this magic they talk about an audit. Oh, we need to audit, and there's this kind of like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that there of course there's waste in the city of Austin. It's a huge organization with 15,000 employees. Like some of those employees are not good employees, and
Yeah.
some of them, and there's some departments that are not functioning as well as other departments. Like we have the same problems that any 15,000 person organization has. But by and large, my experience is that the city of Austin is decently run. I mean, we have some really good outlook. We have an aquatic system that is one of the largest in the country. We have about 35 pools or so. We have beautiful libraries, and the libraries have great programming. We have more parks than most cities, and our parks are really nice. We put all this nice equipment there, and we've been building shade over the playgrounds, and we put in water fountains and those little splash pads that all the kids love. But I'll tell you, you know what about splash pads? They get clogged all the time. They break all the time, and they require a lot of maintenance. We've got to just kind of continue to upkeep. And so, anyway, like, what are they going to cut? No more splash
Yeah.
pads? Are we going to turn off all the splash pads? Like, what are we going to do in order to make up a really the cost pressures that the city faces?
Yeah, we're talking about quality of life at this point too. So, Councilmember Mark Duchin, the lone council member that opposed the TRE, has suggested that the city audit its spending, like you mentioned, like Dallas did. But you brought up a really good point that I genuinely hadn't thought about. Like, okay, so we bring up this audit, then what? Like, is there any, like, one critique is that the city, there isn't much accountability when it comes to spending, right? Is there a reason why we wouldn't do it? Is it going to take a lot of man hours? Will that also cost money? Like, why would there be any pushback against doing an audit?
First of all, the city does an audit every year. We, by state law, have to have an audit of all our expenses to make sure that basically we're spending the money on everything that we say we're going to spend the money on.
Mhm.
And the city of Austin has had clean audits since, way back when. In other words, our financial controls are good and strong. I think mostly when they talk about audit, they're talking about a kind of a performance audit. And we have a city auditor that does performance audits. We've brought in a consultants to do performance audits, but you're not going to audit the entire 15,000 person. Like, if there's an area of the city that you think is being inefficient or not being run well, or there's a problem there, absolutely, we need to take a look at that. That's what the city manager and the department heads do every day, all the time. We bring in outside consultants to help us with that. Can we do this better? Can we do that better? Just to give an example, Austin Energy has brought in folks to talk about our tree trimming program. How can we be more efficient with it? How can it be
Yeah.
more effective? But so we do that all the time. But there's this kind of no one is going to come in and audit the entire city of Austin in one kind of fell swoop. Again, I hate to. This is not a video game, where you just click, 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 and things happen.
Yeah.
This is a real world organization with just challenges and operations, and so on and so forth, and employees that come and go, and things that happen. Like I said, if we want to look at something in particular, let's look at it. But I just don't think that's a realistic kind of idea that someone is going to come in and identify all the waste and remove all the waste. Because I said, even then, what one person thinks of as waste, another person thinks of as very critical government spending,
Right.
and those are political ideas. That's subjective. That's an audit. It's not going to tell you if Barton Springs is worth keeping or not. We know
Right.
that already, right? Like we probably do spend way more money on Barton Springs than we should, and we're probably just so careful that it's kind of absurd, but that's who we are. We love that place and we want to baby it as much as we possibly can. And audit is not going to help you answer that question.
So what are you seeing personally polling wise? What are the polls saying as of now?
I think they're leaning in favor of Prop Q. It's not going to be a home run, 70% of the people voting for it. I don't think that at all. But, I think we'll be able to hopefully pass this with about, 55% or so of the vote.
So what is the main point you want listeners to hear and know as they are heading to the polls? What do you want listeners to keep in mind as they go to the polls, just in case they haven't made their mind up yet?
Quality municipal services. If you want good quality municipal services, they cost money. Nice parks cost money. Providing homeless services costs money. Top tier EMS, fire services cost money. All that stuff costs money. And if we want to keep a high level of service, and we have a high level of service in Austin, if we want to keep that high level of service, we need the revenues to do that. And we're going to need your support to maintain quality municipal services.
Councilmember Vela, thank you for coming on again and talking with me and going through this because, listen, tax rate elections are not interesting or fun topics, but you somehow make it interesting. So I appreciate you coming on here and taking the time.
My pleasure. Happy to be on and anytime.
That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to information supporting Prop Q in our show notes. And again, tune in tomorrow to hear the other side of this tax rate election debate. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. And if you love these super, super local conversations that help inform you about what's happening in our city, support us by becoming a neighbor today at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.